podcast made by women for women. We talk with a wide variety of experts, ranging from a sex therapist to the CDC and everywhere in between, to bring you the stories you're only going to hear here. Our goal is to entertain and educate, because it's more clear now than ever just how much we as women are doing, as parents, as spouses, employees, just as everything. Don't miss out on being in the know. Subscribe to Soul Source wherever you listen to podcasts today. Leave us a review too, because this part's really important. When you leave those reviews, that's how we're able to continue bringing you the content you love each and every week. So buckle up, Soul Source Society, because we're about to get started.
I really feel like millennials have just been disenfranchised by the whole financial system.
Hey everyone, I am your host, Raquel Lamel, and let's take a minute to talk about money. As some of you may know from hearing me on here on Soul Source, I'm a millennial, I'm 30 years old, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the way that millennials have spent money and how we're preparing for our future, because I have a hunch that a lot of us just are not. So I went to college, right? As most of us did. I went to college, I did the 4-year school after high school thing, and you graduate with debt. And I consider myself a little bit luckier than some of my peers. I was able to go to college with a little bit of help. I had some grants, so my financial debt was not quite as high as some of my peers. However, I did have debt to pay back. I have been able to pay back that debt. I've got a mortgage, and me and my husband are able to make that work. However, we just had a baby, and childcare is, that's another astronomical bill that we are taking on. So there's so many things right now. I'm in that part of life, right, where you have a lot of money that you're spending, but I know there's a lot of friends that I have specifically that they just have not been as lucky. I mean, for many of us millennials, we didn't get that financial help. There wasn't that financial education there. So, you know, your thing to do after high school was go to college. So many of us went to a 4-year school. We might not even have known why we were going, but that was the thing to do. You graduated, then 4 years later, you had a bunch of debt, student debt that never goes away. You have to pay that. And then, you know, you come out of college, or coming out of high school if you decided not to even go to college. We were during the Great Recession, so there wasn't a lot of jobs. There wasn't a lot of opportunity for us to get in the workforce right away. And then tag on to that at that same time, people were losing their homes and the banks were having a financial crisis, and we were in the Great Recession. So a lot of millennials, we're the generation known for living in our parents' basements, but there was a lot of reason for why that was the case. Now you fast forward to today, right? Many of us are late 20s, 30s, maybe even pushing 40. There's not a lot of money that's been saved up for retirement in a lot of cases. And many of us might even still be renting, because let's be honest, the financial market right now is just crazy, and the housing market is crazy. And so there's a lot of factors that have us living day to day with our finances and just getting by paycheck to paycheck. And that is why my guest today is so important. Sarah Paulson, she's a millennial herself. She's in this with all of us, and she's the founder of a company called Valkyrie Financial. Sarah founded Valkyrie to help millennial women, especially millennial women, get their finances in order after seeing so many of her friends go into debt up to their ears and not really be able to plan or prepare for retirement. So Sarah, I am so excited to have you on Soul Source today. I know I definitely need the help that you're offering. So let's get started. Welcome to Soul Source.
Thank you so much, Raquel. I am thrilled to be here. Absolutely honored to be a guest, and so excited to hopefully add some value to the Soul Source Society here.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to have a great time today, and I want you to start off by telling me what makes you a financial expert, because you have some special credentials that set you apart.
Yes. So it's kind of crazy. I have been working in personal finance, like wealth management, for over 10 years now, which is absolutely bananas for me to think about, because I'm clearly not that old, obviously. I've been working with clients, I've been helping them, but even more than that, I have earned the CFP, which stands for Certified Financial Planner designation, which means that I learned like way more about the US tax code and every little bit of financial planning and financial nooks and crannies that I ever want to know. And then they changed the tax code. So I have to keep like re-upping on it, but it's the most comprehensive designation that a financial advisor can earn. Like I said, I learned a little bit about everything. And it's also one
Okay.
of the most rigorous to pass. So I am very, very proud of those credentials. And I am so happy that I can bring them to help people.
And we were talking earlier. I just want people to understand the hours of this test that you took. Like, you gave me some astronomical number. What was that?
Yes. So the final exam itself, which is like the culmination of, I had to pass 5 exams to get to the final, and the final was 6 hours long of
Oh,
multiple choice questions of subsections of tax law. Yeah, it took me 18 months to study for this thing. And I'll be completely honest, I bawled when I passed because I was so relieved.
so much work, but it's worth it. And after taking all of that and getting that certification, you are now a business owner. You have a company. It's called Valkyrie Financial. Start off first. Why that name? There's a story there.
Yes, it is a question that I get a lot. What does Valkyrie mean? And it is off of a Norse mythology. I am a little bit Scandinavian, just a little, mostly all American mud, but I'm very proud of all that heritage, like where we all came from. And a Valkyrie is an angelic woman in Norse mythology, and their role is to collect the souls of warriors that fall in battle and bring them up to the Viking version of heaven. And I
Okay.
was really looking for a name that was both fierce and feminine, because those are the women that I have in my life. And those are the women that I want to help. Those millennial women, they're just fantastic. They just need that hand up.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing. So, that kind of leads me into my next question, because I am a little curious, and I did mention you did it because of your friends, right? You knew people. So why are you targeting those millennial women? Why that market so specific?
Well, they say to be an entrepreneur, like you need to find a need and then find a way to fill it, right? So that's exactly what I'm trying to do. It really, really bothered me when I was working my corporate jobs before, that I was helping these people who had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and do financial planning, right? Exactly.
That's a lot.
Exactly. My friends were still struggling with student debt. They were getting married and combining their financial households. They were having babies. They were buying houses, and they just kind of had to wing it. And that didn't feel right to me at all. So I figured, okay, if there's a way I can do this compliantly, because financial services have a lot of regulations around it to protect people, as we should. Money is a super sensitive topic, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of our clients. If I can do it compliantly, let's go for this. Everyone needs the help, right?
Absolutely, and it's such a targeted approach too, which I love, because that is such a niche that doesn't have that help.
Right? Exactly. That's why I went for it and said I couldn't find any sources to point them to. So let's be the source myself.
So, women, we spend and save and do things with our money differently than the guys out there. What are some of those differences? How do women differ?
So the biggest thing that I've really seen that kind of like sums it up, and I can't remember where I read this. I read this a couple years back, and I wish I could credit it to someone, but I don't know where it is. So we're just going to credit it to me now at this point. Sorry, genius. But what I'm going to do is, someone once said that women see money as what it can do for them and their family. How can it take care of them? Versus the guys typically see money as a way to keep score on life. And I think that really encompasses that women, we tend to spend, we tend to be a little bit more sensitive about our money, versus the guys tend to accumulate, and they're willing to take a lot more risk to get more of it, because it's just kind of in the verbiage that we're told that women be soft, be sensitive, be nurturing, help take care of people, versus guys go out and do the thing. Besides that, it's just flat out more expensive to be a woman. You think of how much we spend on hair products and makeup, and
Oh, and the pink tax that's out there. Ugh.
boils my blood. But yeah, it's estimated, and I haven't seen any recent numbers. This is from, I think, 2012, that it was estimated that it's $12,000 more expensive a year to be a woman than it is to be a man. If you're buying the same products, right? Look at that.
Unfair. I don't like that.
I don't like that at all. So
So, I mean, why is that? Why are women, you talked about society. Is it society? Is it society telling us what to do? Is it the way that our brains are wired and we just think differently? Is it a combination? Why are women this way with our money?
I definitely think it's a combination. First off, you've got the industry as a whole, the financial industry. Typically, when I say I'm a financial advisor, if people aren't like looking at me, if they just think financial advisor, you think of a middle-aged white guy in a suit, not a young blonde girl in a sequin jacket and bright red lipstick. And I think that just screws with what we're thinking of from the get-go. But then even looking back into all the way into prehistoric times is that men were the hunters and men were the hunters and women were the gatherers. Is that men would go out, they would take the risk to fight, hunt, bring back the animal, versus women were more in this group of other women taking care of the kids, finding, gathering, talking to each other a bit more, and taking less risk because that was what benefited the family. So I think we've kind of taken this prehistoric knowledge of how our genders contribute to the family, contribute to spreading our species around the world. And then we've also applied years of a system that was just built by men for men, which is the absolute opposite of what Soul Source is all about, which is why we need to be on this call. And figuring out what works for women versus what has worked for the men, and we're told to just kind of slot our ways into.
So, let's drill this down a little bit further. You're focused, the millennials. I mean, you help anyone, right? I'm going to preface this. Sarah will help anybody, but millennials is the focus. I know a lot of millennials, myself included, it's like retirement is just so far out there and it's like, that's never going to happen. I'm going to work until I die, right? So, how is your approach different? How do you help millennials specifically get their stuff straight?
Right. Yes. So I think that's another thing that it really irritates me about the industry is that we call ourselves financial advisors, but most financial advisors, I'm using air quotes here, are really just investment managers by another name. Because when most people think of going to a financial advisor, they think they have to have this portfolio of money that they've saved up, and this advisor is going to tell them where they should put that money. Versus my approach and what my certified financial planner designation kind of brings into me is that I want to look at your whole picture. I kind of see money as like Maslow's pyramid of needs, the hierarchy of needs. And if we're not saving more than we're spending, if we don't have a good relationship with our day-to-day money, then we're never going to get to that top, which I see as the investments. Investments are the goal once you have everything else figured out. So with my clients, I take a drill down, and my first official meeting with a new client when they sign on, we don't talk about money in what they have. We talk about money in what is it going to do for you? What goals do you want to accomplish? Sure, you say you want to save for retirement, but what does that mean for you? Just like you said, Raquel, it's years away.
Yeah.
So let's kind of rein it in a little bit and figure out what's important to you, what's going to get you motivated to connect with your money, and what, like, it's just going to tie it into your own life and be like, oh yeah, this is a tool to bring me the joy that I want in these experiences. And it's so different from every person, which is why I love what I do, is I get to see the gamut of hopes, dreams, goals, and aspirations, which is just so fun. And when you can see that light bulb moment of, oh, this is why we're doing this, that just lights me up.
I love that. And I love how you take this approach, because I feel like with money specifically, and I mean, money is not my strong suit, right? I'm not terrible with it, but I am not by any means like math. It's just, I'm not good at it. I never have been.
You and most people.
But like, I don't like it when somebody comes in and says, well, you should be doing this with your money, and here, we're just going to do this and push some buttons in a computer and off you go. Like, I'm a big why asker. I want to know, why are we doing this? Explain this to me so that I can understand. That's the beauty with what you're doing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. I like to feel like I'm a 2-year-old trying to figure out the world. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? But why? And I want you to have that same connection to your money as well, which that's just the whole tenet around how I deal with my clients is I want you to feel empowered about your money. I'm a financial advisor, not a financial dictator, right? I'm not going to tell you what you need to do. I'm going to give you the options, say, this is what I recommend. This is what makes a lot of sense for your situation, but you get to make that decision. And I want you to be fully aware of why we're making that decision and why it fits for you. Back in my corporate job, I dealt with a lot of clients who maybe they had gone to see an attorney and they had had a trust set up, and they would come in and drop this 50 plus page document and say, here, we have this trust. And I would have to go through it and, well, why is this provision in here? I don't know. The attorney just told me. Well, that doesn't help anyone. If that attorney isn't there to explain it to you, then all you have is a really expensive piece of paper. And I feel like that really applies to our money too. If you don't know where it is or why it's there, it's just not going to connect for you. So giving you that connection of here's why we're doing it, here's why it makes sense for you. So then you can repeat it back like, yes, this is my life and I'm taking control of it.
Oh, right there. That's the key. My life and I'm taking control. Okay. So millennial women, well, millennials in general, but we're talking about women today. You and I had this really interesting conversation before I got on this call with you, but I want to highlight it right now about why are millennials in this financial day-to-day struggle that we're in, and we don't have anything saved up. And I feel like a lot of times millennials get this bad rap, especially from the older generations, about being this irresponsible generation, and we never moved out, and we never this, and all these things. And you have this really interesting theory and reason behind why this is the case. Explain this to me.
Yeah, you kind of alluded to this a little bit in your introduction, which I loved, was that I really feel like millennials have just been disenfranchised by the whole financial system. Like you said, a lot of us were in school or we graduated during the Great Recession. And we got out and we saw that the economy was kind of in shambles. So whose fault was that? It was clearly the bank. We call it the Great Financial Crisis. So there's that distrust. And then we also see like our parents who had worked so hard and they had lost everything. So we just totally lost trust in the financial institutions, and rightfully so. But at the same time, we're in a society that you need to be participating if you're going to get ahead. I think another thing that really just pulls us back is that it is so much of what we already talked about, the why, that financial advisors aren't sharing that. I don't want to go to my tax advisor and have him say, well, we're just going to do this. Off you go. I'm like, no, explain it to me. This isn't something that you just pat on the head, sweet little thing. You need to explain to me what we're doing. And there's also just the whole history of financial services. We've done a really poor job of educating people, right? The financial illiteracy, not just in our country, but really around the world, is awful. And I think that kind of tears back to the 401k, which most people know of as like the retirement account. I feel like most people have heard of a 401k. Didn't even exist until 1981. It wasn't a legal thing. So it was kind of born at the same time we were. And the 401k has become this big entity that everyone has. They're all responsible for saving for their own retirement, but we haven't done any of the education to follow up. And here is how you actually have to use the 401k. Before that, 401k became a legal possibility. Everyone had pensions, right? We hear about our grandparents, maybe even our parents, who started working right out of high school, and then they just continued all the way through at that same company. And they racked up this amazing pension because the company was taking care of them. There was that benefit. Now with the 401k, pensions have kind of gone by the wayside, and companies are saying, here, employee, figure it out yourself, without the necessary education behind it. So there's just this whole storm of stuff really working against millennials that puts us on the disadvantage. And I really feel like it needs to be addressed. And that's part of what I'm doing with Valkyrie, and trying to write blogs and put out fun financial memes that make people go, never thought of it that way before. And just trying to engage people with, yeah, this is hard. It sucks. I'm sorry you weren't taught it, but we're going to try and fix that.
Well, and then there's this other piece. Like, millennials have been hit in so many different ways. Like, we have that all as we're getting started. Now we're all living through COVID. So like, and that's like a shifting landscape, even with like the workforce and how things are happening. But then we were the first generation with the internet and the social media. How has that impacted us?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So yeah, add on everything else that I just said. Plus, now we get to see the best moments of everyone's lives constantly. It's been filtered, it's shiny, it looks awesome. And these are maybe our friends, maybe they're just people that we look up to or aspire to, or celebrities that we see, and they are living their best life. And we want to have that too. We kind of feel like we deserve it versus for all the stress and the anxiety that we have around. If they have it, why can't I have it? So it's actually like rewiring our brains to look for that instant gratification and try to live a life that we don't really have a connection with, but it makes us feel good in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. And I'm not complaining. We're not complaining as millennials. It's just like, you talk about moments that define a generation, and this is what's going on.
Yes. Yeah, we're starting to see some data on the generation behind us, Generation Z, and what their spending habits are and how they interact with social media. But they are really like just coming out of college, the oldest ones. So it's still very much unclear what they're going to do versus the millennials. The oldest of us are turning 40 this year, which also crazy, but we're seeing these patterns of just not having the education, but having these examples of how you're supposed to live or how you think you're supposed to live. And it's really putting everyone back at a disadvantage. We are amazing at living right up to our limits. Like, I feel like most people I talk to, and I'm guilty of this myself, I am not here preaching on a pulpit by any means, like, oh, my paycheck came in, I will take it down to zero. And I'll feel great about it. But then you look at it as the month goes by, and you're like, oh, I saved nothing. And if an emergency comes up, what are you going to do? I was recently quoted in a Business Insider article that about 40% of the population in the US doesn't know how they would pay for an unexpected $400 expense.
Yeah. It's not that much, but it is when you're so tight to the wire. And yeah, it's like, that's what we've been doing for so long.
Exactly. We just keep going, and you hope it never happens to you, which is not a good plan. It makes the planner in me just,
Is it too late for us to get our finances in order then, like down the road and for the future? Because we do live so paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the time is definitely ticking. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but everything we see in finances and the power of compound interest, right? If you start saving, that starts building on itself. And it's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill, right? It starts small, but it just keeps building and building and building. That works most effectively when you start at the beginning. And a lot of people are coming out of college, especially with the Great Recession. They took any job they could get, which may or may not have benefits, may not have a 401k that they could pay into. And if they didn't get that snowball rolling from the get-go, they're really setting themselves back. There are all kinds of projections that show if you put money in the first 10 years of your financial life. So you get out of college, you start working at age 22, you put in money until you're 32.
Okay.
You can actually, and I'm not recommending this is just a projection, you can actually stop putting in money and just let it roll, and you will still come out ahead than someone who started at age 32 and has been putting that same amount in for the rest of their working life, which would be about 30 years. So 10 years versus 30 years, because you've got that compounding interest working on it, that snowball gets to roll down the hill longer, you come out ahead. And that's a huge problem for a lot of millennials who have already missed that boat. We don't have a time machine. We can't take you back. So that just means that if you're starting now, you have to put up so much more money into your retirement to get to that same place as if you had started early. And like you said, when we're living paycheck to paycheck, that's really hard to do. It's so hard to rein in spending once you're at a place where you feel comfortable and you like where you're living.
That is such depressing news.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, there's things that we can do, right? You don't have to feel totally defeated by hearing that from you, right?
No, absolutely not. Like I said, we can work out, and this is something that I'm doing with a lot of my clients, because they come to me and it's like number one question of how do I save for this retirement thing that I want? I have no idea what it looks like, but I'm hoping I can do it at some point in the future. We have to figure out, okay, how much do you need? I think that's thing number one, is we think of retirement as this kind of amorphous, I don't know what it looks like. So let's drill down a little bit and get some ideas of what are you going to need and what's it going to take to get there? And let's do those projections of figuring out, okay, if you're investing, if you're putting so much into more aggressive companies that have a little more reward, you're willing to take on a little more risk for it, then we can figure out what's it going to take to get you there. Maybe we have to push back this idea of retirement a couple of years. Maybe it isn't a full stop retirement. Maybe we plan on you like taking a step back for a little bit, working part-time or picking up a hobby that will kind of pay the bills, but you're not stuck on that 9 to 5. There are all kinds of different strategies that we can do to make it work. The biggest step really is just to take that step. I think millennials and our money, we have put our head in the sand for so long. It's one of those things that's really easy. Like, I'll get to it later. Don't worry about it. I'll get to it later. And then a couple of years go by and like, oh, shoot. Now I've screwed up.
Mm-hmm. For sure. It's
If you get to that, take that first step, make that first snowball and start it down the hill. That's huge.
so if there's one piece of information that our women listeners, those millennials out there who tune in to Soul Source, if they can take something away from this, what's the one thing you want them to take?
It's just that you got to take that first step. I see so many women, and I talk to so many women, and they're so bright and brilliant. And then it comes to their money and they just freeze. And I think it's part of, especially women, we want to be so perfect. We want to get it right. And the thing with finance that's both beautiful and frustrating as all hell is that there isn't one right way to do it. And there's so many different avenues. And what works for your girlfriend might not be the best case for you. So just getting that one thing started, invest in your 401k or start an IRA or start a Roth, or, hey, I'll talk to a financial advisor, and just get the idea of, okay, what's the simplest step that I can do to get me going? And then you kind of get the feel for it. Okay, this is uncomfortable. It's different, but it's not that hard. I think that's another thing that financial services really screwed up, is we make things seem so complicated and so sexy when it's like that, but it's really the simplest things are the things that will get investors ahead.
So if people are looking for a little different sort of financial advice, I mean, like you said, if you're listening to us and you can't see, Sarah's over here in a sequin jacket and red lipstick. Like, she's not what you think of when you think of normal financial guy in a suit. So if people are looking for that little bit of twist and a little bit of a fun pop on finances, how do they get a hold of you?
So valkyriefinance.com is my website. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. And like I kind of said before, I love sharing financial memes. I love trying to make you laugh. I love trying to just make you feel like you are not alone in this. You are not the only one who hasn't figured out the secret of money, because that's most people. I haven't figured out the secret of money, and I've been doing this for 10 years. It's just, yeah, come and find Valkyrie Financial on social media, because I made it confusing. I don't know why. But I would love for you to just like creep on my stuff. And if you pick something up there, awesome. If you want to book a free 45-minute consultation with me and kind of go over, here are my concerns, I can talk about what services that I provide and how I deal with clients. I just really want to make the world a more financially healthy place. So Valkyrie Financial, you'll see me. My website is me in a sparkly dress. No headshots here. No headshots.
I love it. It's not traditional. And I'm going to have links to those. Those are in the show notes here. So if you're looking and you want to get a hold of Sarah, all her information is below. And Sarah, thank you so much. I mean, this is helpful. It's this basic information that, like you said, we're not taught. So I am so excited to be able to provide this for our listeners today and to talk with you, because that's just fun.
Heck yeah. Yeah. I'm so honored, so grateful to have been invited. I really hope I brought value to Soul Source Society, and would love to do it again someday.
Thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more Soul Source, just subscribe to our show. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can watch us too. We're on YouTube. Just look for Soul Source. Soul Source is brought to you by Red Shoes Inc., a leading agency specializing in crisis and strategic communications, media relations, social media, and so much more. To learn more about Soul Source and Red Shoes, visit us at redshoesinc.com.